Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. So here we're going to talk about our strategies to protect your water, optimizing our zones and stations for stronger supervision. But we have Joey, a recreational program supervisor with the City of Barrie, who brings over 24 years of experience and passion for innovation in aquatic leadership. We have Kelly Hogan, who's also with the City of Barrie and brings about 30 years in aquatics, leading Barrie's largest aquatic center, known for strong mentorship and team development.
So I want to start with a term here, and that's dead water. So when we refer to dead water, or Kelly's referring to dead water in a minute, what we're talking about, any part of the pool where the lifeguard team cannot see the surface, middle, or bottom of the pool. We call that dead water because we can't protect it, and now it's vulnerable. And our guards are out there to protect our pool and the water. So a great place to start here is to calibrate yourself and your team members with this simple question: what can you see? So in other organizations and here in Barrie, this was an important part of our journey because we would go to some of our lifeguards on the front line and we would say, what can you see in the pool? And some of our team members would say, oh, I can see everything. And then we would ask a follow-up question: what can you see on the bottom of the pool? And what we learned is a lot of our lifeguards would then say, hey, I can't see anything on the bottom of the pool over there. And that was a big aha moment for me, especially because I realized that what I determined as what you can see and what they were considering as what you can see was a little different. And I went through that journey myself. I think when I was a 16, 17-year-old lifeguard, I probably was protecting more the top of the water. And as I went through more professional development like this or the sessions from life saving, I started to better calibrate what that meant. And I started understanding the full column of water, the middle and the bottom of the pool, we have to protect equally as well. So this is a good question to start your journey on, to see, are you considering that the same as your team? So what would cause that dead water? We're not going to go so specifically into this because I feel like everyone on this call has a good grasp on this. But some of those common causes of dead water is going to be your glare, as you can see in that one of the top photos with the light coming through the window. That's going to make it very difficult. And we also know that when the water's moving, it's going to catch more light. So it's really important that when you're doing any of these exercises to figure out your guard positions, you have movement in your water. So try to do it when guests are in the pool or a bunch of team members swimming around. I've used a reaching pole to move the water. The other one is going to be the second image with the reaching pole. So refraction. We know that the water is going to bend the light. And this is really important for us because a great story about this, a team member, when I was with the team in Mississauga, we had talked about these concepts in the training as we rolled out our new positions. And when he was guarding at the end of the pool, he said, Joey, I can't see any of their feet standing at the shallow end. So hopped in my bathing suit, went in the pool, and sure enough, when I was lying on the ground in the bottom of the pool, there was like a pie-shaped slice because of the refraction. And Kelly's going to walk you through later a bit of the journey with training the team members and how that looked. And this is really a good point to help understand why it's important to understand these concepts as part of figuring out these zones. We also have blind spots, like with the ramp. You can see the ramp here at Kelly's pool in the middle. It's a solid blocked wall. So that's going to create a blind spot for seeing into that ramp. We have surface agitation, which can be caused by different features and things like that that disrupt the surface that make that difficult. In the bottom left photo, we're trying to show you here how shadows can also darken a part of the bottom of the pool there, which can create a big challenge, especially at outdoor pools. Some of the shadows can be quite dark, compromising our ability to see that as effectively. A big aha moment for me on this topic, I was listening to Gary Johnson when I was in San Diego at a conference, and he was sharing his journey about having guarded at a pool for 20 plus years and having a critical event, and it went to litigation and some stuff. And he said something that really shocked me. And he said, I never want to learn something about my pool in a courtroom. And he was really inspiring other people from his story because he was learning things about his pool that he had been at for so long in a courtroom. So I think this is a really good foundation for us to put under this topic because, oftentimes we've got lots of admin, we've got a lot of competing pressures. We might be moving location to location. Do we really stop and get to know our pools well? Do we really stop and go into those guard positions? And I can tell you early on in my career, for sure, this is not something I had prioritized. but now it's for sure a big priority of mine because I want to make sure that if something ever happened, someone's not coming in to investigate and then telling me, hey, this guard can't see over there. And I'm going to leave that with you guys as a bit of a call to action to say, do you know your pools really well? Do you know the different zones and what your guards can see? And this should be put right on the top of the priority and maybe a good place to start as well. Another one is I'm going to encourage you to go back to the basics. I mean, crack open that NL or alert manual, excuse me, and make sure that like how you built your lifeguards and the philosophies and the things that they were trained to look at and consider when they were learning how to protect a pool, and is that reflective in your approach? So we learn a lot about intensive, so like our zone. We learn about extensive, more of a global coverage approach. And then we learn that the combined approach is better and we're going to protect our water better. And the thing about the combined approach is we're going to end up with double sets of eyes on our water. So my big takeaway with this is I realized that a lot of the organizations or pools that I built charts for back in the day, I had just sliced the pool up into a whole bunch of zones. And I wasn't really leveraging that combined approach. And where's the power of an extensive versus an intensive? So step back and look at your strategy that you're using with your guard placements to figure out the best location for your guards and what are they watching? What is that strategy and combination? So let's dive into that just a little bit more on the next slide. But before we get there, I just want to talk to you about like what part of the pool might need more supervision, or when we look at our strategy of supervision, where are we putting more sets of eyes? So the Redwoods Group, if you're not familiar with them, they're an insurance company out of the United States. They primarily insure boys and girls clubs, YMCA, youth-focused things, but they do a lot of work in aquatics. And they took a close look at all of their events that had happened, and they started really looking at what was the depth that the different non-fatal and fatal drowning events were happening. And what they learned is 69% of the incidents were happening in shallow water. And I think this is important because I think in our minds as a 15, 16-year-old lifeguard, we just kind of think deep water is more dangerous, but our shallow water can be deep to a lot of our guests. So really just understanding that risk involved. And this is something that we applied or that I've applied for sure along my journey to say, I need lots of sets of eyes on my shallow water. So here's the typical 6-lane, 25-meter pool. And you can see with 4 guards, I could say that a lot of places would just split it into 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, 4 guards. That would be a very intensive zone-focused approach. But what you see here is that number 3 is more of a global. And then we've got 1, 2, and 4 all intensively looking at that. And Kelly's going to share a little bit about her guard charts and how they communicate what information to them. But if you look at this from an approach to supervision, what we're going to see here is that we've got a lot more sets of eyes on that shallow water, which covers our entrance point. And we've got a lot approaching that deeper water where that depth changes there. So really think through, what is your approach to supervision? How are you designing the guards and what they're looking at? And then the easy part is going to be the implementation and the training later on that Kelly's going to walk you through with that. Here's where it gets a bit harder. When you're out there on deck and Kelly's going to walk you through her process, sometimes you can see just as well from position A and position B. So then it's like, okay, well, if A and B can see the same, where should I choose between the two? And this is something that when I was with the city of Mississauga, we worked through, and we've adopted this here in Barrie. And that's like, what layers are we using to help guide our decision with where we're placing these guards? And what I found is we had a lot of guards placed at pools that I've seen based on kind of that response. That was like, we do a lot of training. The recognition's hard to do in training, and we really were focused on, okay, the incidents happen here, I can get to them easier. It's easier to get through training that way. But what we really want to think about with our supervision is, where are those priorities? So I'm going to invite you to consider recognition as your top priority. And the reason for that is it doesn't matter how fast I can get to someone if I never see them. If we have dead water, if we have blind spots, if we have glare, it doesn't matter if I can get to them 10 seconds faster if I never recognize that they need that help. So even if the best position is on the far corner of the pool, but they can protect that pool and that water the best, that's probably going to be your best place to put the guard. The second layer that we would then, if A and B can see the same, that we would consider would be prevention. And that's going to be, okay, I can see the best between the two. Where can I stop it before it happens? Accident prevention is probably our top mandate, or I hope that we're encouraging this as our top mandate for our lifeguards. Stop it before it happens. So taking that philosophy, okay, if I'm positioned here and maybe I'm closer to an entrance, or maybe I'm closer to where I know there's tough behaviors that happen or where someone transitions, where can I be the best prevention um, tool to prevent things from happening? And then if A and B, so recognition and prevention, come out as a wash, and you're going to go down to a third layer of trying to determine the best position, I'm going to invite you to think of response. And that's like where we get into what I started this discussion with, is like, okay, where can I get them faster? How do I get them out and a breath into them to interrupt that drowning process the fastest? Maybe you have a focal point in your emergency action plan figured out. So this is a tool to help you kind of navigate some of those debates as you're wrestling between those different positions. So I'm going to pass you now off to Kelly, and Kelly's going to kind of take you through a case study with her team and her pool, having recently gone through this, and hopefully give you a bit of a roadmap on how you can navigate this topic and enhancing your positions from there. And feel free to throw questions as we go into the chat. We'll monitor those as well.
Hi, everyone. So this is just a quick overview of the 3 facilities that we have in Barrie. All are double tank facilities. So the one at the top is the one where I'm currently sitting. It's the Peggy Hill Teen Community Center. There is a water slide as well. It's got quite a large small pool, 6-lane tank with a lot of cutouts and odd angles that proved very challenging for us. The one on the bottom left is East Bayfield Community Center. It's like more of our competition pool. It's an 8-lane pool, so it's a very large body of water to supervise. And then the one on the bottom right is Allendale. It is the more typical like 6-lane box pool. And then both of those pools also have a small pool as well to guard. So next slide, Joey. This is just an overview of our process. This is kind of a bird's eye view of our journey through this, and I'm going to take you through each of the different topics. So the first thing we did would be to identify the dead water. So recognizing that we couldn't see everything from our current guard positions. And what I think is really important to talk about here is that it's okay to say that we can do a better job or that we can do more. And I've been at my pool for almost 15 years now. And so it's not to say that what we were doing in the past was wrong, but I think it's important to identify that as our industry grows and learns more, and as we as professionals grow and learn more, we can see where we can do better. And as I go through this process, I will talk about reviewing and revisiting things, because we can keep doing that. So we realized we couldn't set our guards up for success. And, as aquatic professionals, we don't need to lose sleep over the 15-year-olds guarding the pool and what they can see. So the next thing we did was getting the buy-in. So we had an audit done by the Life Saving Society, which was a very helpful tool to start those conversations and have some like pointed out where we could do better. The next thing we did is started those conversations with the managers and directors here. And we were very deliberate in our approach to this. It's one thing to sit in a meeting or sit in a Teams call and say, we can't see everything on the bottom of the pool, or we want to add this, or we need some money for this. And, everyone wants to support safety. But what we did is we actually brought them out on deck. We used the silhouettes because the shape of the body was a little bit different. And we put our director in his suit in one of our guard chairs and said, from this position, what can you see that's at the bottom of the pool? And we had a corner that we called the corner of doom here, that was very hard to see due to some shadows and some glare on top of that and the way the cutouts went. And one of the silhouettes was placed there very purposefully, and he couldn't see it. And then when he got down off the guard chair and we walked him around and showed him, hey, there was actually this body size silhouette that you couldn't see from our guard chair. That was very black and white, right? So it's a visual for them. And like I said, it's not that safety isn't everyone's priority, but really having that visual, it goes a lot longer, it goes a long way to showing the importance of what we were saying and what we needed. So it was also good for them to understand at a higher level that if there is going to be an incident, that our guard positions would be where anybody that's doing any kind of inquest would be standing from to see what our guards could see. So that it's vitally important to set them up for success and making sure that we are able to see everywhere. It also helps them understand that yes, there are ratios and yeah, we're being compliant to ratios, but being compliant to the ratios doesn't mean that you can see everything in your pool. So the next step was securing our resources. And one of the things we did was that we purchased the AquaConscience Angel devices. There is the link there to, if you're interested in them. That's a picture of what they look like. They sink, they go to the bottom of the pool. And what you do is you lay them out in a kind of a grid pattern, or even especially in your blind spots, and you get a guard to sit in their position and count what they can see. And if you have 24 of them down there and they can only see 22, then we know that in that position, they can't see all of the zone that we or they think they can see. So it's also a very good visual tool to see exactly what you can see at the bottom of your pool. We understood very early on in this work that we needed more guards on our pool. So we did secure the funding to correct the issue. We added an additional guard at 2 of our facilities, Peggy Hill Team and East Bayfield, just right off the hop, knowing that that's probably where we were getting to anyways. Everybody has to be responsible for the budget, but creating that buy-in with the people who are in charge of the budget is what helps to create the space for it, or the buy-in for what programming changes needed to be made.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add to that, Kelly.
Mhm.
Those devices also have been a really helpful training tool, because then you can
Yeah.
put them in. And one thing that's really great about those, remember I spoke about earlier about having guests in the pool when you're doing the zone work. You can put these in and people can swim and walk all over them. They're designed to be in the water with guests in them, so that worked out quite well as well.
Yep, they're great for your NL classes as well, and scanning drills and things like that. So that we've used them quite a few times. They're heavy. The boxes are heavy, so. Then the next was our calibration. And we wanted everybody to be on the same page. So all of we are the whole team to be on the same page, speaking the same language, so that everyone can understand the objective that we had. And what do we need to protect? All of the water. So regardless of how many guests in the pool, whether there's 3 people in the pool or 150 people in the pool, we want to be able to see all of the water. How long did we want our scans to take? So for us, we said we wanted a target of 15 seconds. Can guards do more than 1 tank? Again, for us, we said no, we needed guards on each tank. And then how do we define C? So going back to what Joey said earlier about what can you see? For us, that means the full column of water, the bottom, the middle, and the surface of the water. And we want our guard to be able to see everything in their zone, or everything that they are tasked to see. We do treat certain things differently. So Aquafit we treat as an instructional setting. And we'll go over, like, swim meets are a little bit different, and we have a guard chart for that as well.
Yeah,
So the
just
next,
so
go.
one other thing, Kelly, on this, just to chat a little bit. One thing here in Barrie that was kind of newer for me, but we do a lot of split programming where we've got, let's say, lessons going on and a lane swim. And that was a big discussion with our team as well. And I had discussions with Michael Shane earlier. And what we came to is we can't really just cherry pick 2 lanes of the lane swim and not protect the whole pool, because people don't always kind of submerge in a convenient fashion down. So when we do have a drop-in swim environment, we are protecting that whole tank of water. Are we good for the next one, Kelly?
Yep.
Awesome.
Then we enhanced our knowledge. Like Joey said, getting out your alert manual, but we also looked at our audit report that we had done here, or getting an audit done report done for yourselves, the Model Aquatic Health Code, other industry best practices. So we wanted to prepare ourselves with the best information and the most up-to-date information possible. And then we had an initial reaction. So if you go to the next slide. So we added additional guards interim to help protect the water while we were undergoing this review. So there's an uncomfortable bit at the beginning where you have recognized, we can't see everything we want them to see, or it's not optimized. So what do we do while we're trying to figure it out? And our solution to that was just put another guard on the tank. Imperfect progress is better than nothing. So we have recognized that there is a gap here. We're going to throw a resource at it, and then we can adjust that as the process goes on and as we learn what we need to do.
And Kelly, that extra reaction guard, I think at the one site kind of ended up almost exactly where
Yes.
the work validated it, right? So do your best guess. And the one thing I really loved about the programming team here and with Kelly is that was a very engaged process with the deck team. Say, okay, we need to react now because we can protect it. And I think you're going to talk a little bit about their reactions through that. So remember that when Kelly's sharing that story of it later.
So now we get into the fun part. So we did start at Peggy at my pool, and we started with a deck supervisor meeting, and that really prepped them for the calibration. So what did they need to know? So going over some of the things that Joey had already talked about are what are our danger zones? What is the refraction? What are, the scanning patterns? How long do we want to take? How long do we want that to take? So calibrating them to our expectations. And then we went out on deck, and we went from the current guard positions, and they were given a map of the pool, and they were supposed to highlight what they couldn't see. And this was a fun exercise, and it was very eye-opening for them. And a lot of them were very like, oh, that corner of doom you can't see from the middle guard chair. And so it was eye-opening for them to see that there were gaps. And this was really important later on in the implementation process, because they were buying in right from the start. They were seeing why we were doing this right from the start. So that finding the dead water and mapping it was their like holy crap moment of when I'm here and I'm in charge as a deck supervisor, and I have a bunch of 15-year-olds guarding with me, and I'm in charge of making sure they can see everything. This is sitting on me too. So we then picked a team to research and look for what the best positions were going to be. And could Joey and I have done that? Of course, we could have gone on deck and done that ourselves and then just told them. But we felt like involving the team with this was going to give us a better better result in the end. And it really did. We picked for our team, and this worked really well, so I'm going to share, is we picked number one, the person that we thought was going to be the hardest to convince that change is good. So it could be the one that hates change. It could be the one that had been there the longest, maybe the one that, isn't always taking that leadership role. So we picked one of those, and then we looked at, okay, who's really invested in the process. So when we were doing the mapping and looking at where we couldn't see, who seemed really invested and involved and wanted to see where we could go with this. So that was our team. And then they were tasked with, we gave them a timeline of, let's find some new positions. This was tough at Peggy. As like I said, we have a bunch of jut outs. We have that big long ramp that has a solid wall. The glare there is pretty crazy. So we had a lot of challenges when it came down to, can we do this? And we learned very, very quickly, no, we can't do this with one guard. So then how do we do it with two guards? So we verified the positions. Verifying the positions for us meant that we were checking at all hours of the day, because we know our glare is different in the early hours of the morning. We know that it's different mid-afternoon. What are the shadows at night, that kind of thing. And also when different things are going on. What are we seeing in a super busy open swim as opposed to an aquafit or a fitness swim? So we verified our positions, we created new guard charts. I'll go over our guard charts in a little bit. And then we trained. Our training looked different through the different pools just because we have different sizes of teams. But for here, that training was actually going over how to do a patrol in our zones, what each new zone meant. We changed our zones and what we were doing fairly drastically here. So we really felt the need to train them. If this is your zone and you are position 1 on this pool, this is exactly what you are responsible for. And then we implemented and we review it. It is important to review. Like I had said before, getting into that mindset of continually wanting to do better and be safer is important, and looking at it from that aspect. And what we found actually here in our annual review was that there is a very short time period in the fall and in the spring where the sun is at a certain point where the glare makes it almost impossible. And we did have to shift some things just for those like tiny little windows. It's not for the whole year. It's literally like a 10-day spot wherever we are in the season. So, but that's where that annual review comes in. We want to make sure that this is working throughout the year, that it's working for all seasons.
Kelly, do you want to walk through and the small pool 2 guards, what those additional arrows represent?
Sure. So for our small pool, and the arrows mean that that guard is responsible for those areas specifically because the other guard cannot see them. So while they are we consider a zone with the circle around it means that you are responsible for that full zone. But we know with the green arrow that the red guard cannot see, that's a wall there. So the red guard can't see that side of the wall. And for the 2 red arrows, the guard 2 cannot see those 2 places. So that's why we have overlapped those 2 intensive zones, knowing that there are those 3 blind spots in that pool. We even created guard charts for our swim test. So the one on the right of the screen is our swim test, noting that the swim test guard will go behind that patrol guard and that their responsibility is to stay behind them and out of their way. I think, so here's a closer up look at the guard charts. This is our main pool. We did standardize this across the city. So all 3 pools use the same colors for first, second, third, fourth, fifth guard on the pool and the same symbols. So for us, the square is a guard chair. The circle is a standing position, but if it's a dotted line, that's a patrol. When we were creating this, we did engage some of the team members as well. We tried with a new team member, with a very seasoned team member, because we wanted this to be as simple as possible for them to understand. And when we were talking about, if you are guard 1, what are you responsible for? They would take the paper and they would draw their finger around that area. So it became very clear that an intensive zone to our team members meant a circle, that they were responsible for everything within that circle. So we kind of ran with that. All of our guard charts include notes on what they need to be doing. This is a 25-meter pool, 6 lanes. And then the other thing that we did that was a pretty big change for Barrie was that we had, as Joey talked about, very much just kind of added guards on, but your zone kind of, your slice of the pie was the same. What we do here, you can see the one on the left, which is 3 lifeguards. 3 is a global guard over everywhere. But when we add that 4th lifeguard on, then 3 becomes global to the shallow end, and then 4 is global to the deep end with some overlap at the red line and where it starts getting deeper. So again, when you're training your staff, you do need to make sure that they understand how their role changes as more guards come onto the pool. And it was that recognition, prevention, response that Joey had already talked about is what really led us where we put our added guards. Where did we go for the 5th guard and that kind of thing.
If you want to see me with more hair, you're welcome to scan that QR code. It's an older video, but I'll just add on that our next evolution that we're working on now is that we're going to have a QR code beside each of these guard positions. And the reason for that is every time you have a deck supervisor do an orientation and kind of train your guards where they need to stand, what they need to look at, it could be very different. And a great exercise I'd invite you to do is go to 3 deck supervisors and ask them to give you an orientation. If they're all very different, then you gotta kind of build some guardrails on that. So the benefit of having a QR code where you're saying this is where you're standing, this is your zone, this is what you need to look at. It's something that your team could use as a coaching tool to say, hey, go back, watch the QR code. And at the orientations, it's a consistent standard. But also if something happens and anyone's ever asking you, how did you tell them where they needed to be and what they needed to watch? Well, here's our baseline, and then we enhance that with our frontline team. So that's something we're working on now.
So the second site we did was the East Bayfield Community Center. So that was our competition pool. So it is an 8-lane pool, so it's very wide. And we did identify the need there for separate guard charts just for swim meets. And you can see from these guard charts, it's because when you have a lot of officials and or swimmers in the starting blocks or at the bottom of the pool watching the turns and stuff like that, we couldn't do the patrol that we were doing there before. So we do have separate guard charts for the swim meets that we put into place. This is where we had gotten, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Peggy later on, but this is where we knew we had to get creative with some things. And when we were looking at the glare that we were getting from some of the big windows from across the pool gallery here, what were some of the things that were causing the glare? And we actually had team members holding mats up against the wall to cut back on glare to see if that would improve our sight lines. And what that came out for us was that we actually repainted that pillar that's in the red circle. So you'll see that the bottom of the pillar is now the gray of the wall. It used to be the same white that the whole top of the pillar is. So looking at the finishes on your wall, and those doors, those exit doors are a very common material and they're very shiny and reflective. So recognizing that some of those things architecturally that weren't really taken into account when there was no water in the pool can now affect what your lifeguards can see. So we painted the pillar there. We installed, this is just an example of the mirror that we ended up putting into the ramp so that the guard 2 could still see all areas of the ramp. So thinking more outside the box and not just where can we put a team member, but also what else can we do to make this easier was important. It was also really interesting for me as I went to East Bayfield to help that team with it, was that the reaction from the deck supervisors was almost exactly the same as it was at Peggy Hill. So the whole like, oh my God, if they're standing there, they actually can't see that part of the pool. We need to react to this. It was both very gratifying to see that our team could recognize and react and respond exactly how we would hope that they would as a leader in our team. And as Joey had said, the temporary kind of guard that we had thrown on the pool there, once we did all the validation, was very, very close to where the actual positions ended up being. And then, next slide would be Allendale. So Allendale is our smallest pool and kind of our simplest pool in terms of design. And it just basically was like learn and edit, rinse and repeat. So the training is changing as the team sizes are different. Obviously, I have almost 100 team members here at Peggy Hill. Allendale has less than half that. So the way that we're rolling it out, the Peggy Hill changes were also very drastic from what it looked like before to what it looked like afterwards. So it involved a little bit more. But we purposefully tackled our pools hardest to easiest because we wanted to be able to learn as much as possible in that first round so that we really could just move on to the next few pools with as little editing and relearning as possible. So we wanted to best understand, what were the tools at our disposal and what did we need to learn and how did we need to roll this out when it was going to be complicated, and then, it would made it easier as we went along. And then the annual review. So again, we're trying to build that culture and behavior of understanding our water. And the work we do is right for the time that we're doing it, but we can get better. All of the programmers here, I'm moving to a different pool in the new year. So being able to go through this process and do the reviews and have that just be part of our culture, I think is an important step. It also makes it easier for our frontline team to come to us and say, this is what I've noticed, or this is where I'm struggling, or I, and have that culture of the ones that are the front line feeling empowered to come to us and say, can we fix this? Because that's how we're going to get better. That's how we're going to get safer. Some of our challenges. So, like I said, Peggy afforded some very, very big challenges. We have a water slide, and when we were trying to figure out how to get it into two guards could see everything, we were talking about just putting somebody at the top of the slide just to watch the pool, not for the slide. So the two big things that we ended up doing, and both were a budget impact. One, so the picture on the right is that we covered up a window. We just had to get rid of that glare. That was what fixed our corner of doom for a lot of it. And so also, and that's where the buy-in from everybody comes in. We had to work with facility to get this window covered and what was going to be the best way to do it and the safest way to do it. And them understanding the why behind it was important. And then the other thing we did is we installed a fixed guard chair. And the way we came to that was actually a pretty creative solution by the team that was working on it. And they were sitting in our movable guard chairs and they just said, it's too far back. I cannot see straight down. We had the conscious things in the bottom and I can't see the ones that are closest to the wall. And they actually flipped the chair around so that they could turn the seat, and that made the movable chair so that they could see straight down, and that we were like, okay, so a fixed guard chair would actually solve this problem for us. Again, it's not a cheap solution. It was 10K guard chair, but when you balance that against the annual labor of, if we don't do these things, then it would take 3 people to guard this pool. And the labor of that and the cost of that was not something that we wanted to do. Joey's really good at spending the money as it is. So we want to save our budget for those things and not adding the extra guards on the pool.
Yeah, because we were, just funny point on this, we were literally like pulling our hair out. I was going gray because we were basically, we need 3 guards because of that corner. And I was like, okay, I already sold, the amount that we had. So I really appreciated the inclusive approach that was used and seeing our part-time solve this to, 28K annually over 10 years, just do the math. So I'm just going to echo Kelly's point there about getting your frontline team involved. They know your pool better than you.
Yeah. And then another challenge we had is, so my pool here gets pretty busy, and on a full swim with all guards up, we could have 11 different positions, including the slide. And how they rotated that was, we started out with the kind of the normal rotation that you would do, where you would want to go from a more challenging position to maybe a not as stressful position, or if they're up in the slide and it's really hot, then we want to give them a bit of a break. But it was confusing. And then if they were doing a double, then it was, you're going here to go over there to go up there. This graphic is really actually accurate. And our new team members it was an added level of stress and nervousness that they didn't need, that they couldn't remember what the rotation was or where they were supposed to go next. So we really simplified it. And at first glance with our senior team members, they were like, oh, why are we doing this? And then once we explained it and they saw it in action, they were like, why haven't we been doing this all along? So again, it's not that before was wrong. It's that when you use the tools and the information and the new information at your disposal and you think outside of the box, you can just make improvements. So our new rotations are very simple. You're going in a circle. And what we added to that, which was really important, was that as they get down or as they leave their position, they are going to do a bottom scan as they either walk to an off rotation or they're going to go to their next position. And we have made the rotation so that they are walking farther, yes, sometimes, but that the whole pool is now being scanned. And when they leave their zone, they are clearing it. And they can pass off that ownership of their zone to someone else, knowing that they have scanned the bottom of their entire zone before they go into the next zone. So it's added a layer of protection that for Joey and I has been one of those, like, help us sleep better at night things that we are adding in these layers that you don't necessarily think about, but has been a really big improvement that we have seen.
Yeah, and
And
that works well because when they're coming off, I just want to kind of visualize this. When they're coming off, they're actually walking the long way around the pool and like very physically leaning over and doing that bottom scan. And I just want to underscore what Kelly was saying. It also really helps them reinforce what their zone is when they're doing that and the ownership of that zone. So that's been a big win. Thanks for sharing that.
And then just one of our challenges as well is that our old positions were primarily standing and stationary, then they'd be elevated in guard chairs and finally a patrol. And our new positions are very much patrol first, also with the elevated, and standing and stationary is one of our least used positions. But that is where, if you go back to the deck supervisor meeting in the beginning, they understood. They bought in, they know why we're doing it. So there was very little implementation challenges for Joey and the programmers because the lead staff knew why we were doing it. And they very much policed the guards because it was their swim. And having gone through the exercise of where is the dead water, what can't we see, they were far more motivated and engaged to make sure that the guards were patrolling properly, that they were walking their full patrol and doing what they were supposed to be doing. So that was we were hoping that that would be the outcome, but it really did strengthen our implementation by having the lead staff all be engaged and involved.
So this is our last slide, and then Stephanie's going to come on and share a couple words. But feel free, we're going to just do a short Q&A after. So start populating that chat with your questions so we can do our best to answer them. We've hit a couple as we went. But I want to finish off on kind of one of the other things that we observed through this process was our guards were really good at the people prevention and really focused on our guests. They were really good at watching the behaviors. They were coming to us, understanding those 5 scanning strategies, head counting, mental filing, grouping, all that kind of stuff. But we were noticing that with some of those discussions, and Kelly mentioned this about those ratios, some of these changes, it was tough because it's like, well, why do we need 2 guards on? There's 6 people in the pool. And we had to really work on changing our culture and our language. So we started using language more consistently about people scans and pool scans, and really tying those scanning patterns. And Perry, thank you for the question in the chat. With these scanning patterns are really going to help you organize that bottom scan. And we started really saying, make sure you do people scans and pool scans. It's so important to continue those people scans and watching for those behaviors and organizing your thoughts during your scan to catch and prevent, okay, where did that kid go? But we also needed to see through the water because we do know that lifeguards are human and they do miss the event. It's quick, it's fast. So we wanted to make sure that if we missed the drowning event at the surface of the water, that our team was really protecting the bottom of that pool as well. And we found that our people scan versus pool scan language really helped. Another thing to consider is your words make a big difference. This is something Juanita helped me learn early in my career is, team versus staff. But also if you say scan versus maybe search or investigate, they mean different things. So if your team is really thinking about searching the water and investigating the water, that's really going to help set them up for success when they're on stand with what they do. And that language also gives your frontline supervisors, your deck supervisors, a foothold for some of that feedback and to start those discussions with them. This is our contact information. You're welcome to reach out to us if you have any questions. I do want to thank you guys all for joining us. I want to encourage you to look at your pools differently and think about how you're seeing your water. Have those conversations with your team. A big thank you to the Life Saving Society for involving Kelly and I in this topic. This is something that we've worked really hard on and are super pleased to share this. Have yourself a wonderful day.